Hello and welcome back to Beaver Lake Nature Center. Today we are going to take a walk down the Bog Trail. It is 0.6 miles and located right off of the Hemlock Hollow Trail. Contrary to the name, the Bog Trail actually contains a fen. So both fen and bogs are peat-based wetlands, meaning they contain sphagnum moss. So the sphagnum moss would weave a sort of mat, and that would stop water from leaking through the mat itself. So then that creates the actual wetland. Plants will start growing on top of the sphagnum moss mat. Animals will start taking advantage. And then depending on the source of water, that's where the main difference comes in. In bogs, the main sources of water that comes into the system is strictly rainwater. Whereas fens, they usually rely on an outside source. They'll receive the significant water input from something like a stream or groundwater or even a lake. Fens are also not as acidic as bogs. So since bogs get the majority of the water in the system through rain, that creates a more acidic environment. Whereas fens, since they do get their input from a different source, their pH is higher. The lake here at Beaver Lake has a pH of 9, and there's also calcium in the soils. That then adds nutrients into the wetlands and makes the pH a little bit more alkaline, making it a fen. As we walk down, you'll find this little platform here that goes over the water. This platform is a great place to observe wildlife, specifically a variety of fish, including bullheads, bluegills, as well as seeing some snapping turtles or Midland painted turtles. It's a great way to be able to see these fish and other aquatic animals as close as you can get. Another reason why we know that this wetland is a fen is through a couple of indicator species. One of those indicator species is this tree. So this is a northern white cedar, and they are one of the plants that only grows in fens. They do not grow in bogs. So this is a great way for anyone to know whether or not the wetland that they're standing in is a fen or is a bog. And they have pretty distinct features, including these scale-like leaves on these needles. They do produce cones as well, and they are essentially outlining the start of the Bog Trail boardwalk. So as we walk onto the boardwalk for the bog, you'll see quite a variety of bright green, lush plants. One of the very widespread plants we have here is this royal fern. You'll find this all over the Bog Trail itself, on both sides, all the way down. There's gonna be a lot of royal ferns here. Another tree that you'll find here is the speckled alder. Here are some of the cones, some of the leaves of the speckled alder. This is one of the preferred food sources for beavers, and you'll find these all over the Bog Trail as well. So another species of plant you'll find here are these blueberries. They're going to be dotted all over the Bog Trail as well, and they are edible. And as you can see, they are blue. A lot of these have ripened already, and they have that crown, which would have been the old flowers. That's where the old flowers would have been. And here we have another plant that you'll find all along the bog as well. This is black chokeberry. Contrary to the name itself, it is still edible. However, the fruit themselves, when eaten raw, are highly astringent, so they're pretty unpleasant to eat. So generally speaking, most people would eat the black chokeberry in a more processed manner, such as jams, jellies, or syrups. But they are also very high in antioxidants, making them pretty nutritious. And you'll find both the black chokeberry and the blueberry all throughout the Bog Trail. Another indicator species that we know that makes this wetland a fen is this. So this is called sweet gale. It is another indicator species that only will grow in fens rather than bogs. So between the sweet gale here and the white cedar that we saw earlier, we know that this area is particularly a fen and not a bog. So as we come a little further, we'll come to this area that is covered in cattails. Cattails are long grasses, and they are pretty easily identified through their fruits here, as you can see, as well as a very tall and narrow leaf blade. Quite a few parts of the cattails are actually edible. The developing green flower spike, so this area here before it starts to fruit, can be boiled and then eaten. The male flowers, which would be right at the top there, but unfortunately it is past the season for the male flowers, the pollen can be collected and used as a flower supplement or a thickener even. Before the plants flower themselves, the tender insides of the shoots can be squeezed out and eaten raw or cooked, and the starchy rhizomes are nutritious with a protein content comparable to that of maize or rice. The leaves themselves can also be used. They are pretty waterproof, so they would make a great mat if you are going to create a shelter. And you can also turn the leaves into rope. So these plants are considered to be a pretty standard survival resource for a lot of people who are big into survival techniques. So as we continue on, you'll start to see quite an abundance of these pitcher plants. They are an insectivorous plant, so they do eat insects. The system here lacks quite a few nutrients, including nitrates, so they will attract insects with their different color as well as nectar availability. And so the insect will fall inside the trap into these pitchers, where there are downward facing spines on the lip that prevent the insect from coming back out, and then the water inside help essentially keep the insect inside. Then the insectivorous plant will ingest the insect by secreting enzymes to help digest it and then absorbing the nutrients. So you'll find these pitcher plants in quite a few different places around here, and you'll see the leftover parts of the flowers of the pitcher plant as well. As we continue onto the trail, it will eventually fork. We'll go straight ahead into the Bog Island. So the Bog Island here is a physical piece of land. It is not a part of the bog or the fen, and it does house trees that you would find typically in a forest, like this American beech, these eastern hemlocks, because this is solid ground. The fen connects to this Bog Island, and the Bog Island is a great place to get away from the open sun that you'll usually find in the Bog Trail, here being considerably shadier than the Bog Trail. So as we move towards the end of the island, keep an eye out for signs of the beaver. So the North American beaver is the second largest rodent in the world, but also the largest rodent in North America. They are semi-aquatic mammals and will spend most of their time in the water, mostly because they are much faster in the water than they are on land. But they will come up onto the land in order to find their preferred food sources. But they will also come onto the shore in order to cut down trees for their dens, called lodges, and their dams that they build. They also need to constantly keep chewing because their incisors, much like other rodents, will continuously grow. So in order to keep the incisors at a reasonable level where it'll be more easily fitting, they need to constantly keep chewing. And they will chew these saplings down in order to use them, but they will also chew on bigger trees in order to keep their incisors at the appropriate size. Due to all the recent rains, as well as the shady nature of this area of the Bog Trail, we will also come across quite a few fungi. So this is a fungus that looks like in the family of Amanita, and we know that because of the scales left on the cap of the mushroom, as well as how the cap is convex. And if we look a little further down, you will see parts of the veil, or the area left from the ring, from the casing that the Amanita sort of came through. When the Amanita mushrooms are younger, they sort of create almost an egg-shaped casing around the fruiting body, and they kind of break through that fruiting body, and parts of it will still be left around the stem of the fruiting body. And that creates that ring that is a good indicator of the Amanita type of mushrooms. So let's head back onto the boardwalk, and we will continue on. So we will come across this intersection again. This time we're going to go down this way. So here is the platform that is called the Bog Tower. It is a great place to look at the lake itself. There's also a wildlife viewing scope that you can use, and it opens up into the lake. This is a great place to potentially see beavers in the early mornings or evenings. You might be able to spot a beaver munching away at these lily pads. So these lily pads are one of the preferred food sources for beavers. And here we have the white fragrant water lilies and the yellow bullhead water lilies. You can potentially spot a bald eagle flying around, also an osprey, and other waterfowl and birds of prey. You can also possibly find a kingfisher, great blue heron. During fall and spring, this will be a great spot to see the migration happen, where we'll see hundreds of waterfowl, from geese and ducks, sometimes even the common loon. You'll also see some songbirds flying around. Here we'll see and hear a Baltimore oriole, some tree swallows flying around as well. And if you're lucky, you might potentially see a snapping turtle and a Midland painted turtle as well. So as we walk away from the Bog Tower, you can also spot some of the other distinct plants that we'll find here at the Nature Center, right in the Bog Trail. This is Arrow Arum, and it gets that name from its distinct arrow-shaped leaves. And you'll find these all over the wetlands here at the Nature Center, as well as these sensitive ferns. These you'll find in not just the Bog Trail, but also you'll find them on the Woodland Trail and the Deep Woods, where you see the more wetter areas. So here we come at the first crossing where the large area of cattails. We're gonna head this way. And you'll still see the variety of black chokeberries as well as the blueberries and the speckled alder. You'll also come across what is called the bog pond. Here you could potentially see muskrats as well as snapping turtles swimming in this small area of water. So as we continue on, this area here has something that's very important that you should recognize. So right in front of us here, this is poison sumac. It has a long red petiole with about 11 leaflets, with one that's at the end. We call that a terminal leaflet, with gray bark, and it is a tree. It is poison sumac, and so you will get a rash that's similar to the one with poison ivy. If you see poison sumac, be sure to not touch any part of the tree itself, including the white berries that can come up. And be sure you don't touch the water as well, because the oil that the poison sumac secretes that causes the itchy allergic reaction in your skin can also float on top of water. So be sure to stay away from all parts of this tree as well as the surrounding water. So here is the moss that is the base of the bog and fen wetlands. This is sphagnum moss. It's easily identifiable by the rosettes that it forms right up top. A top portion of the sphagnum moss is photosynthetic. However, there is a very long part that is underneath all of this that is essentially dead cells. These dead cells help absorb as much water as possible. They will create the dense mats and keep everything watertight, and this is what causes the fen to form and float on top of the lake. So here we are going to find another insectivorous plant called the sundew. They are quite small plants with hair-like projections that are, as you can see, glistening because of the sun with a sort of dew or nectar. This helps attract insects to the leaves, and then once an insect lands on the leaves, it sort of acts like a flypaper where the insect will then be stuck on the leaf. Over time, the outside hairs will bend inward to sort of trap the insect in, and then just like the pitcher plant, the sundew will release an enzyme to help digest that insect in order to get the nutrients that it's missing from the fen. You'll also find cranberries growing here at the Nature Center. Cranberries will grow both in bogs and in fens. And the cranberries right now are currently still green. They'll ripen up by the time the fall comes, but you'll be able to see these dots of green fruit within the cranberry plant. So as we continue on, you'll come back to the start of the Bog Trail. And so ends the virtual tour of the Bog Trail. Thank you so much for joining us this week. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them down below. And we'll see you at the next virtual program. Bye!